Welcome to The Reset, a weekly dispatch of experiences and takes on performance and modern care. For the athlete, the practitioner, and the thinker, we break down recovery, health, and performance systems to reshape the conversation around wellness. Hello everyone and welcome to the Reset audio files. This week we are exploring the paradox of strength at the heart of both physiological and personal growth, and why the body and the mind only adapt when we stop gripping so tightly. We're taught to chase intensity, but the body builds strength in the quiet, in the invisible spaces between the effort. From here, we can truly learn our potential in order to grow and perform at a higher level each day. This post breaks down the surprising truth that growth is born in surrendering physiologically, emotionally, and everywhere in between. From muscle biology to emotional regulation, the same rule applies. Adaptation happens in the space after the stress. If you struggle to rest without feeling like you're falling behind, this one's for you. Enjoy. The Reset, Episode 26. Strength through surrender. Unmasking the truth behind the paradox of progress through intense effort and how we can adjust to acquire a more balanced mindset around our training. Introduction. The days of over-glorifying effort are over. A shift is being made to no longer rely on energy out, but refining the practice of energy in and rejuvenating the stores of effort that we have to give. The requirement of maintaining an optimal level of health is dependent on recovery, thus calling on us to surrender. We need effort. It is the engine that drives experience and stress, both of which are required for practice to create adaptation, whether we're training, recovering, learning, or competing. But chasing intensity, like it's the only currency that counts, is a surefire way to not only lead yourself down a dangerous path of perpetually forceful physical stress, but also to create a reward system that is dependent on how hard you work, not necessarily how efficiently or intelligently you do. This can be a problem when you examine what actually creates adaptation. No matter if you're building muscle or building resiliency, you need to do it properly. That means prioritizing the way you do things, not just that you do them. So it takes a little surrender. Surrender to the regrouping of thoughts and effort, rather than succumbing to the allure of sweat, blood, and tears. Strength isn't built in the strain, it's built in the spaces between the strain, the calm, the gray area. Every experienced lifter knows this, and every patient of mine in rehab eventually learns it. You don't grow during the set, you grow during the rest, the recovery, the treatment in between. Yet we resist rest as if it means we're falling behind. We treat surrender like it's quitting, when in truth, it's timing. All to understand, it's knowing when to yield so your system can absorb what you've just asked of it. The body remodels in recovery, and the mind knows progress has always lived in the cycles: tension and release, contraction and expansion, load and restoration. Life follows the same law. You can't hold your breath forever. You can't stay braced for the next hit and still expect to evolve. And so we cannot view letting go as losing ground. We have to identify it for what it is, giving space for a new strength to take form, a strength that is sustainable and built on perfected practice. The paradox of progress. We tend to think progress is linear. More effort equals more results. But biological systems don't operate in straight lines. They more closely present themselves in waves, ups and downs, peaks and valleys, all telling stories and ripe with data that we should be paying attention to with the utmost focus. Whether you feel your best or your worst, you can always learn from your body. With that information, we can create something out of nothing if it's utilized properly. Through that process, there are many phases of function. To be able to function properly, we must adapt and change. That comes through specific processes. Every meaningful change in the body follows the same pattern. Stress leads to breakdown, leads to repair, which leads to adaptation, and therefore capacity increases. Take away the repair phase and nothing adapts. It sits in the middle of that list like a speed bump in a school zone. Without it, we can create chaos within our own systems. Maybe that's dramatic, though it paints a pretty vivid picture. Increase the stress without increasing the space around it, and the system collapses. This is the paradox. Strength is not increased through force. Strength is allowed through surrender. The muscle that never relaxes never grows, and it doesn't stand a chance to recover. That rolls into more than just physical. It is just as important to consider that the mind that never softens also never has a chance to quiet. It can't be expected to recenter and regain focus. So with that, we understand that in order for our effort to mean something, we must surrender to the notion that rest is where growth we so intensely crave happens. And therefore, surrender is not passive. It's a physiological requirement for transformation. This theme is not monopolized by only the physical nature of the human body. Rather, it intertwines with and throughout all aspects of our lives. Its architecture is not limited to physical output, recovery, and mechanical stress. It plays a similar role within and is heavily tied to our emotional state. The emotional mirror. Emotional resilience works exactly like muscular resilience. You break down when you carry tension too long, mentally, emotionally, relationally. Your nervous system fatigues and your capacity shrinks. And when that happens, your world narrows to the small space between stressor and reaction to that stressor. This cannot be a regular occurrence. If it is, your system will show signs of fatigue. When this happens, we develop a capacity to perform every day within a barely manageable, heightened state of sympathetic activity. This can present as a slightly heightened resting heart rate, tight muscles, and potentially inflammation or swelling in non-localized areas. It will most certainly show up in your sleep quality and energy levels, for maintaining that level of steady metabolic activity is taxing on the system. People who carry this burden of stress throughout their lives end up either dependent on external assistance in the form of substances or relationships to help down-regulate themselves, or they learn to adapt and disassociate to the stress they accumulate each day. The latter are commonly misdiagnosed as ADHD or OCD individuals and are typically high-performing, successful people in their professional lives. They have drive, they're focused, and they're high-earning. It is something most people aim to achieve, this high level of functioning. But give yourself a window to release, to drop the internal bracing, and something will shift. Your system recalibrates, your perception widens, and the integration begins. We start to see that rest is not the interruption of your progress, rather the consolidation of your progress, and the repositioning to a higher level. The beauty in accepting and embracing the consolidated effort is that your surrender today becomes the space where tomorrow's strength settles in. Everything above is true on a philosophical and emotional level, but this principle is also written directly into your biology. Here's what's actually happening inside your muscles, hormones, and nervous system when you stop pushing and finally give the body time to rebuild. Muscle recovery and the biology of adaptation. Every workout, every stressor creates microscopic damage. Tiny disruptions called micro tears form in the muscle fibers. This is a natural process in building strength and muscle density. That damage is not the progress, though. It's the invitation for satellite cells to rush to the site, which their job is to patch, fuse, and rebuild those torn fibers into a more resilient unit. This repair and healing creates a more stable environment to withstand that micro-trauma again and again after that. This is called hypertrophy. the actual construction of muscle size and strength, and it only happens when you step away from the work. During that phase, protein synthesis ramps up, growth hormone surges during deep sleep, and hormone regulation occurs through multiple processes that depend on how much you sleep, the quality of that sleep, and your diet and hydration. And inflammation rises just enough to stimulate repair, but only if the system isn't pushed past its capacity. This is where most will get ahead of themselves, pushing too far too soon. Overtrain and you interrupt the entire cycle, limiting your capacity to recover for the next day and the next workout. The problem isn't so much that 1 or 2 nights where you can't sleep or you can't stick to your diet. The problem comes while you're in that sympathetic state, and more stressors are placed on the system. Stressors like continuing with your workout plan that was designed for when you feel optimal, and when you choose to ignore the signs that you need to step back from your workout plan designed to manage your output and recover. Most of us are guilty of pushing forward with no impulse to reevaluate, drawing us further down in metabolic debt. The nervous system drains, causing cortisol to stay elevated, and in this state, the much needed and integral part of the process, being inflammation, lingers for far too long instead of resolving, keeping you in a state of swelling. And because of this, adaptation halts, and long-term inflammatory responses interfere with the progress that you believe you're making. Progress isn't created by force, it's created by the completion of the repair cycle. And the strength is nothing more than your body's response to the stress that you allow it to recover from. Body practice. The active rest scan. This is a 5-minute practice designed to teach your system that stillness is not stagnation. Here are the instructions. Number 1. Lie on the floor with your palms facing up. Number 2. Take one slow breath, not to relax, but to arrive where you are. Number 3. Move attention throughout your body, one region at a time. You need to focus on each area, feeling it, being in it. Think of your jaw, your shoulders, your ribs, your abdomen, your hips, thighs, calves, your hands and feet, and how they're all eventually connected. Don't try to relax anything. Instead, imagine each area softening just by 1 degree, a tiny shift in tone. 5. Let the body settle, not collapse. And 6. Notice the subtle release in your breath, the widening of your awareness, and the sense of lowering without falling. This is how you signal to your parasympathetic nervous system that it's safe to rebuild. This is how strength is integrated. And this is how you rest, with purpose. Closing. We spend so much of our lives chasing the next ounce of output that we forget how every meaningful adaptation relies on the space that follows our effort. Our biology makes that clear, but so does lived experience. That without deliberate pause, the system simply can't absorb what we've asked of it. What looks like stillness from the outside is actually the most productive part of the cycle, where our muscles repair, hormones recalibrate, and the nervous system widens its capacity again. Contrary to what we potentially have always believed, rest and recovery aren't an interruption of progress. They are an important part of the mechanism that makes progress possible. That truth extends beyond the physical. Emotionally and mentally, the same pattern holds. Tension without release shrinks our world, narrows our perception, and erodes resilience. But when we give ourselves permission to soften, even slightly, then the whole system opens up to new possibilities. What once felt like falling behind in progress is actually a consolidation of energy. What felt like loosening our grip is the moment the body and the mind finally integrate the work we've done. In that small gap between effort and rest, strength quietly reorganizes itself in your direction. So the practice becomes less about pushing harder and more about learning when to yield, not as an escape, but as an intentional part of the cycle that allows growth to take form. When we surrender at the right moments, we aren't stepping away from our goals. Rather, we are creating the conditions to reach them with more clarity, more capacity, and more longevity. And it's in that space that tomorrow's resilience, focus, and capability truly settled in. In health and performance, Alex.